Today, Cervelo have launched a brand new version of their S5 Aero race bike and it's being used in the Tour de France right now. I saw the bike at the Grand Depart in Lille a few days ago and caught up with the lead engineer behind the bike to find out all the nitty-gritty details about the changes and improvements. So we'll hear from him in a moment, but first let me give you an overview of the main changes. And naturally the bike is faster and lighter than the old bike because nobody wants heavier and slower, do they? And visually the new bike looks very similar to the current outgoing bike. It's a case of refinement and evolution of the proven design that's been well used by the Visma Lease bike team in the Tour de France for the last few years, and we are increasingly seeing the likes of Jonas Vingegaard use the Aero bike over the lightweight R5 in more stages of the Tour de France, even when the roads point upwards. It's still not as light as the R5 though. The bike I filmed weighed a claimed 7.1 kilos, which shows there's still room for a lightweight bike to exist alongside that Aero bike because the UCI weight limit is 6.8 kilos. So yeah, for the flat stages, the S5 makes more sense, and I would imagine on the big mountain stages, Jonas and the rest of the team will go back to the R5, which has also been updated. Hopefully you saw my video on that, linked above and down below in case you missed it. So, brand new S5, and they are claiming it's 6.3 watts more Aero than the old S5 and 10.7 watts more Aero than the nearest rivals, which in their data they share is the Cannondale Super 6 Evo and a Specialized Tarmac SL8. Their claims, not mine. The new bike is also lighter as well. Of course, the total frame set weight, including the fork, the handlebar and the seat post, is 124 grams lighter, despite the new fork, which has a deeper profile than the old bike, is actually 53 grams heavier than the old version. The frame on its own is 1,006 grams, which is about 29 grams lighter than the old S5. So it shows that while Aero bikes and Aero frames are getting lighter and lighter, there's still a limit to how light they can go and maintain the Aero, because something like the R5 or an Athos or a Tarmac is down to 600-700 grams. So the frame is giving away 300 grams to a lightweight bike, and that is the price, the weight penalty of an Aero bike. The other big change on the new bike is a one-piece handlebar. They still have the same elevated V profile praying mantis shape as before, but now one piece, and that saves a chunk of weight over the old handlebar and looks way cleaner and looks really nice as well. All the profiles are slightly smaller as well to try and shave a bit of weight, but also maintain the same Aero as the old bike. The handlebar still looks essentially the same with that V-shaped from the steering tube and the top section, but now a bit lighter thanks to being one piece. Comes in a range of widths from 36 up to 40, so definitely narrow is the focus for the handlebar. And it's striking just how radical and futuristic the S5 still looks, partly down to that V-shaped handlebar. And interesting how some brands, while not copying, but definitely taking inspiration from the S5, with the likes of the Carnago Y1 RS and of course the Bianchi Ultra RC taking some inspiration from that sort of elevated handlebar design. But let's hear from Scotty, the engineer behind the new bike, to find out from the horse's mouth the challenge of making a bike faster and lighter.
Where do you start with this new bike? What was the starting point, the brief to make the bike better?
Make it faster, basically. Make it faster and don't ruin an already great thing. So I think it's difficult, right? We've been working on this bike for 3 years, so it's nice to see it out in public finally. But it's broadly speaking, it's not difficult to make a fast bike. I think it's difficult to make a fast bike that doesn't get heavier, that doesn't sacrifice its ride characteristics, its ride feel that everyone is used to. So the first thing everyone noticed about the bike is the front end. So the one-piece handlebar, the one-piece cockpit, and the significantly deeper chord section in the fork is the really obvious first things that everyone notices, but the whole bike has been optimized and changed in order to save the weight and reduce the weight in the system. The one-piece handlebar is is what we've decided to go with, and what that allows us to do is remove all that redundant weight. Right, and there's reinforcements that's needed between the stem and the handlebar, as well as all the hardware that's associated with that. So, looking at the fork, it looks a lot beefier than the outgoing S5. So there's no silver bullet that allows us to take weight out of that. So this fork is slightly heavier than the outgoing fork, but as a system, it's about 140 grams lighter. So the weight that we've saved in the front end, as I mentioned, there's also the seat post has been changed. All of these things added up, slight reduction in weight in the frame itself allowed us to pull the weight of the system down. So the bike got about 6.5 watts faster than the outgoing S5, but it also is 140-ish grams lighter in a size 56.
How much of a challenge is it balancing the need to make it more aero and faster and also make it lighter, not sacrifice kind of ride quality, stiffness?
Incredibly difficult. I think we've always prided ourselves on bikes that really handle exceptionally well. And it takes a long time. A lot of the development work goes into refining the shapes to get the aero performance we need, and then validating those shapes with actual testing. Does it ride the same way? Does what we feel match what we saw in FEA, and does what we see in the tunnel match what we saw in CFD? So, yeah, it takes a lot of heavy lifting from the team to get it to where it is.
So the new handlebar fork, has the rest of the frame changed much? It looks visually very similar.
Yeah,
to the old one.
every shape, every tube itself has changed.
Okay.
It is. Oh, good catch.
Good catch.
I think a thing that will be obviously noticeable, I mentioned a few times, is the fork, but the head tube section got a little bit deeper. Another really interesting part is the seat tube itself. If you put the bikes back to back, it got quite narrow and quite thin inside profile. Another thing that's been refined is the seat stay. So the seat stay to seat tube junction has been cleaned up, driven by aerodynamic performance as well as improved manufacturability. So that allowed us to pull the weight out of that slightly. But yeah, if you look at the bike in isolation, it might seem that not much has changed, but if you put the bikes back to back and side by side, then you do see a lot of differences between the two.
The UCI sort of modified the rules around the aspect ratios. Has that influenced the design of the bike, or has that not been a factor?
No, not for us, not for this bike. Like I mentioned, we penned this bike about 3 years ago, so I think there's disappointment within the industry, but this specific bike is well and UCI. So.
And for the team, choosing between the S5 and the R5, from the company point of view, do you advise them on which bike to choose? Is it data driven? Is it rider feel preference? Because we are seeing the importance of aero, the racing getting faster, and the bike's getting lighter, so they can now use an aero bike on a mountain stage where they wouldn't have done 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work really closely with the team as well as SRAM, and advise them. They have all done, right? So they have their own technical team, and they're able to provide recommendations to the riders on what is the best optimal solution for a specific stage in a specific race. A combination of, like if you saw a couple last year, Jonas on the S5 and really narrow, low-profile tires or wheels. Sorry, it's essentially a mix and match. We don't dictate what needs to be ridden. We just provide all the data and work with the team on the best solution to get to the end the fastest.
Okay. And some brands are conversion their aero lightweight bikes. You still have the R5 in your lineup. Do you see the S5 becoming as light as the R5? Could you get to a point where you could have one bike? Does it all?
I think that we continue to provide the best solution for each individual use case. I think providing the lightest and stiffest climbing bike is still a necessity, and providing the fastest aerodynamic bike is still a necessity. And I mean, ultimately our goal is to make riders faster. So having a single solution is always going to have a certain amount of compromise in certain stages. So I think as where we sit for us at this point, there is still very much meat on the bone for an R5 and an S5 in its own unique category.
It's still a radical looking bike. It's been around for quite a while, the V-Stem, the concept. It's still radical. We are seeing a few other brands not copying it, but emulating this approach. Why do you think it's taken our brands so long to come out with something similar? And do you still see it being the ultimate solution, this approach to aerodynamics and weight and performance?
Yeah, I think it's at this point in time, yeah, absolutely. I think it's if it wasn't, we wouldn't be doing it. We're always looking for the best solution to the given problem. And in this case, it was make a fast bike. So if we had discovered an approach that was faster than the current V-stem, then we would be adopting it. But where we sit and where the data that we have and all the testing we've done, I mean, it's humbling. It's nice seeing other brands clue on to the savings that can be had with an external steerer and a non-conventional stem, I'll say, because there's a number of, Focus has something, Factor, has something similar now. Yes. Bianchi did, obviously. Colnago is as well, so it's yeah, it's nice. It's imitation flattery is the best form. Imitation is the best form of flattery, however that goes.
Yeah. As a V-stem, has it changed much since it first came out?
Yeah, massively. So it might not look like it. It's, like you said, it's still a radical shape, but obviously the first generation and the second generation of the V-stem were a two-piece handlebar. This is a single piece. The angle of attack of the V and the chord length of that stem itself has changed between all three generations. So there's refinement in the profile in this, as well as how we've managed to funnel the air through that V itself.
Was it quite a manufacturing challenge in the early days? And is it less of a manufacturing challenge now with improvements in the processes available and carbon layout?
I wouldn't say less, because the approach to a two-piece handlebar is a different approach to a one-piece handlebar. Yeah. Absolutely, the very first generation of that S5 with the external steer and the V-stem itself was difficult, was a heavy lift. There was lessons learned over the years, and those have been applied to the latest generation of that bike, but there were still solutions that needed to come up to come together to figure out how to mold this as one piece and save the weight that we needed to pull out of that system while keeping the stiffness of the handlebar the same.
So are you a Reserve run separately? Was that sort of in-house?
No, it is a collab. So we do all the design work. So we do all the aerodynamic work for Reserve. Reserve has its own factory. So we end up controlling, Reserve ends up controlling a lot of the manufacturing. So in the same way that we control the manufacturing of the frames, we can do the same thing for the wheels. Are
you designing the wheels in combination with the frame? Is it a synergy between the two elements?
Yeah, so the previous generation bike we talked about, the wheels being designed for the frame. This is the first bike, again, I mentioned we started this 3 years ago, where both fed into each other. So it's difficult to see, but if you come around the front of the bike, our bikes all have asymmetry in the seat tube. It's inherently part of our BB Wright story. But now the rear wheel has a huge amount of asymmetry to match that profile in the seat tube. So the wheels themselves, individually, are faster than the outgoing 5263s, but also in combination with the S5, it's the fastest solution that we've come up with. So
this frame with different wheels would be slower than with the wheels because they're designed
both
harmony.
Yeah, so we would optimize wheel shape, refine frame shape, optimize frame shape, refine wheel shape.
What do you think of some certain brands going deep at the front with a wheel? Is that
like this, like wide or deeper?
Yeah.
I think then you run into a balance with, so our learnings in turbulent aero about wheel stability, it's a very fine line to keep that deep wheel stable. Not impossible, but what we've come up with and what we feel is that this depth in these wheels are incredibly stable, incredibly, I don't want to say neutral handling, but it's a really good way of understanding it, where in crosswinds, it's not reactive. And so when we're developing wheels, we develop in laminar flow, so in steady state, basically. And then we also then test in and validate in turbulent flow to better simulate real world conditions. And that allows us to correct for any wheel fluctuations or understand where the stall position is of that front wheel or rear wheel or any of that, and we can refine the shape of that wheel to slow the stall down, not have an abrupt stall, have like a really, like if you've ever seen any of those wind tunnel graphs, where you have it's fast, and then it stalls. You want to reduce the severity of that stall, and that gives you an inherently stable wheel. So and that's able to be tested in laminar flow, absolutely, but then we see not a different result, but we see varied results in turbulent flow, and then we can adjust accordingly.
Okay. How important is the rim width, tunnel width, and the tyre width to Aero as well?
Hugely important. The interface between tyre and rim is the single most important. One of the single most important aspects of aerodynamic performance for wheels.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the new handlebar, how many options do we have for fit for getting the right position on the bike?
Yeah, so both the S5 and the R5, now that they have overlapping fit geometries, there is 19 combinations of stem lengths and bar widths. So we go from a 36-40 all the way up to a 40-44 in, I believe it's 80 mil length to a 140.
And no issues with the UCI's new rules around width with these?
Yeah, no comment. No, we seem to be okay.
Okay.
We seem to be okay.
That's a good job for Jonas. He won't get
exactly. Slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
And the new bike comes in a range of builds. There's your typical 2x from Shimano and SRAM, but also a SRAM Explore 1x, the 1x13 speed gravel group set used on a road bike. And we've seen quite a few of the Visma Lisa bike team using the group set on their bikes as well, and also the regular non-Explore Axis 1x as well. And Cervelo claims with that Explore group set you can save a further 2 watts thanks to that single chainring versus 2 chainrings and no front derailleur, as well as saving a better weight and also simpler shifting as well. And they share a chart in their presentation about the gear range of that 1x versus 2x and giving you more high end and more low end as well. So prices, I'll put prices down below, but in the UK, a frame set will cost £5,400 and complete builds start from just over £9,000 with SRAM Force and up to £12,500 with SRAM Red Axis group set. So there we go, the brand new Cervelo S5 with a chat with the engineer behind the project that's been on the go for the last few years. Let me know what you think of the bike by dropping a comment down below. And if you want to see a roundup of some of the other new Cervelo race bikes launched or unveiled at the Tour de France, then watch this video right here.